It's Tuesday, August 12th. Welcome to Scouting the League. Spent most of yesterday talking about the NFL, and for good reason. I was an NFL scout. It is what I know first and foremost. But just 11 days out from our opening day of college games mean college teams are rounding into form. So whether you are an agent, an aspiring scout, or just a fan, looking at these rosters from an NFL draft perspective is where we will go today. But before we do that, make sure you like, subscribe, and share this podcast wherever you are listening and watching. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, over on YouTube. If you like that video portion, make sure you check it out wherever we are at. And most importantly, share it with a friend. Continue to grow our audience. We love you guys. We loved meeting you at the Personnel and Recruiting Symposium. And as we continue to do our thing on the daily podcast here, we like to hear from you listeners. So whether you are on X, Instagram, want to shoot over a message, make sure you let us know. I am at RightStepADV on X. My website is rsafootball.com. If you are curious about anything more that I do, or perhaps my background, if you haven't heard about me talk about it on here, my co-host, who we hear from every Wednesday, as well as on that fantastic Friday wrap, Neil Stratton, is at Inside the League on X, InsideTheLeague.com as well. And make sure you check out his blog, SucceedInFootball.com, where he is sharing his news, notes, and everything you need to know from that football world. Neil is fantastic. Make sure you check him out. And check out our home and host, ProFootballInsiders.com, and they're on X at pro_FB_insiders. As I mentioned yesterday, I'm excited for some of our upcoming conversations with people across the world, whether it's in sports or outside of sports that is making its way into sports. Annie Duke, if you're a poker fan, you will know her name. She's going to join us here in the next few weeks, as well as from the All-Star Games, Eric Galko and Drew Fabiniac and Jordan Reed of ESPN to talk some about the players that we are going to be seeing real soon on the college field. It is a loaded group, a fantastic group, experts in each of their areas. So make sure you tune in, set your reminders, set those notifications to come on for Scouting the League. And if you haven't listened yet and bought your insoles, make sure you head back and listen to our conversation with Stuart Jenkins of Blue Maca, his Olympic background, his roots in Nebraska. Use code SCOUTING20. Get 20% off of your order of those Blue Maca insoles. Whether you're a trainer, a GM, an agent, these insoles should be a part of what you do. If you're on your feet, stick them in your shoes. You'll feel better by the end of the day. Have your athletes in them as well. Have them part of your arsenal. So, to college rosters. One of the great things about scouting is working through the weeds of team performance and identifying players that can play in the NFL. You think about last year's college football playoff teams. Arizona State, 1 player drafted. Boise State, 2 players drafted. They were competing with teams like Texas, who had 12 players drafted, and Penn State, who had 5 players drafted. Penn State had probably 3 or 4 additional players chose to return to school that probably would have been part of that draft class. But first, you have to give huge credit to coaches Kenny Dillingham and Spencer Danielson at these 2 schools, Arizona State and Boise. Again, getting their teams to, if you want to call them, overachieve, better as a team than the individuals on them. Again, huge credit to them. Both these teams, again, led by really good running backs in Cam Scatabo, Ashton Janty. Again, synergy, though, is what helped elevate these teams. Again, it can be tough to get through the weeds sometimes. Hey, these are, again, you want to call them tier 2 teams? Not anymore. They were in the college football player. They're clearly tier 1 teams. But again, the synergy of the 22, the 11 on offense, 11 on defense, your special teams guys, push them to where even without a ton of quote-unquote NFL talent, they competed with these teams, had teams on the ropes, teams right, in the crosshairs before they ultimately fell. Getting those actual results is not always easy. On the other end, you talk about Ohio State, clearly the pedigree, clearly the national champion, 14 picks. Oregon, again, number 1 team most of the year. They had 10. Again, when you look at those rosters, it's this flip side. You don't fall into the trap of, hey, just because he plays for Ohio State means he's an NFL draft pick. No, that is absolutely not the case. You don't want to elevate teams because of the helmet and the logo they have on. Again, it's Ohio State, it's Alabama, it's Georgia. Really good teams. Again, you maybe have to talk yourself out of those players sometimes. Do they have the traits? Do they have the height, weight, speed? Do they belong in the conversation with drafted players? Yes, they probably do belong in the conversation, where just because of the helmet, that doesn't mean they are necessarily worthy of that draft status. Again, you throw out their teams like Maryland and Florida. They had 6 or 7 players drafted, depending. I believe it was Maryland had 6, Florida had 7. Again, they had, clearly more players than some of these college football playoff teams. But again, ask the questions. Ask the questions on why these teams had players, couldn't win, couldn't lose. Again, that is ultimately what it comes down to. It's a traits-driven league for the most part. And again, just because they're starting or not starting at schools like this doesn't mean they do or don't belong in the NFL conversation. There's always the great example, an exception, absolutely, but J.C. Hassenauer, backup at Alabama, backup to a bunch of really good offensive linemen and center more specifically, started 3 games in his career at Alabama, became an undrafted free agent, again, one that we talked about in Atlanta after we signed him, again, had NFL traits. Yes, undrafted traits, but he had NFL traits. Really high intelligence. He was really reliable, had good anchor, good base, really good at that pivot spot at center. He was a backup at Alabama. But again, when you listen to our scouts in Atlanta talk about it, you walk in like, hey, this guy would probably be starting at, half the SEC schools, again, half the Big Ten schools. He'd be starting across the country. Pre-portal, again, this player made probably the right decision to stay at Alabama, develop behind these NFL guys, these high-round NFL guys, and continue to get better. So again, that's where the scouts, again, really do their best work, really do their yeoman's work getting these guys right. J.C. Hassenauer, huge example. Again, ends up starting, I think, more games in the NFL than he did in college. Again, exception, absolutely. But it just goes to show that you have to do the work on the individual when it comes to NFL draft standpoint. Because, again, it doesn't matter where you're at. If you have NFL traits, scouts will find you. So if you're a fan, you're looking at your teams, you're starting to think about your college teams, and maybe you're watching some practice, you're going through the depth charts. Ultimately, to you, it doesn't really matter how your team gets it done. You just want wins. Again, put it on the head coach, put it on the quarterback to a certain degree, put it on your big name players, your dudes, your guys that are going to carry you throughout the year. Again, at the end of the day, you just want wins, you want results. If you're a scout, though, the results of the team factored in to a degree, but again, you really have to dig for those traits. Height, weight, speed, traits, projections matter more than ultimately what that team is doing. And no, the better pro than college prospect conversation rarely comes to fruition. You hear it with a couple players about every year. To me, again, I really think about one player who, again, if you want to say he was a better pro than better, again, JC would fall into that category. But again, we didn't get to see a ton of it at Alabama. Josh Uche at Michigan was about a 45% playtime guy at Michigan coming out. Again, he's really developed into a premier pass rusher in the NFL, a high upside pass rusher in the NFL. But again, you come and ask the reasons. Find out the reasons. Again, Josh Uche, a guy that I did a ton of work on. J.C. Hassenauer, our Southeast scout, did a ton of work on. Again, you ask the questions on why have these guys not played? Is there a reason? Again, it rarely comes in that he's a better pro than college player. But again, with some of these programs where maybe not as much NFL talent, or you're just buried on the depth chart, at an Alabama, at an Ohio State, maybe it does come to fruition in that way. But again, plenty of signs, plenty of indicators that guy was really good at the college level. The other thing that really comes into play this time of year is, this guy's playing out of position for my college team. When he gets to the NFL, he's going to do this and he's going to be awesome. Again, college coaches, they have a job to do. They want to win. They're going to put their best players in position to do what they do best for their defense. Again, if that means adjusting the defense, they're going to do it. They're not going to play I am so stubborn, I'm going to play this player because this is what our defense does. Yes, you get some of that, not very often, especially not for your top-end NFL draft caliber athletes. Again, it was always the question, guys like last year, Shamar Stewart coming out of Texas A&M, he's going to be a better pro, he's going to get the sacks. They asked him to, stop the run game, play on the edge, maybe play some 4-out-5. Again, If this guy's an elite pass rusher, have him rush the passer. That's the end of the day. If you want to be a good defense, have a bunch of really good pass rushers. So taking that into consideration, a lot of times we see it with some of these smaller edges. Is he a Sam linebacker? Does he move inside? He's an overhang player. He's playing in space. Pump the brakes. College coaches are going to put these guys in position to be the best defense, get the most value out of them. Hard to argue that if we're playing a player in space, it's because he has more value over rushing the passer. No, rushing the passer has the best traits, has the best value to get that position going. So college coaches, if he's got an elite pass rusher, guess what? He's going to have him rushing the passer most of the time. There may be some situations where, hey, we're going to move him into space. We're going to run this defense. This situation calls for it. But at the end of the day, you're going to see college coaches utilizing players to get the most out of them, which means at some point NFL scouts are going to be able to evaluate them, likely where you're going to see them in the NFL. So again, at the end of the day, if you're a fan, doesn't matter. You want results. If you're a scout, you have to dig in, do a little bit more work. When you have more questions as a scout is when, hey, we've got 7, 8 draft prospects and the team's underachieving. They're only maybe a 5, 6, 7 win team. Just leads to more questions. We talk about it with scouting all the time. It is a question and answer game. Incongruence leads to more questions. Is it a quarterback? Is it a heavy defensive loaded, talented team? We just don't have it on offense. We have a bunch of low scoring games. Again, ask the questions, get the answer. When there's a really tough incongruence in how it all matches up, look for the answer. But at the end of the day, find the traits. Who makes it look easy? Those are probably the players that belong in the NFL. And as you watch your college teams, it will all start to come to balance as we get into it. Get out of the headlines, get out of the noise, trust your eyes, do your work, and it'll all come back to where it needs to be. Questions, comments, agree, disagree, let me know. I can take it. At RightStepADV is where you can find me. I want to help agents. I want to help players. I want to help teams make the right decision. Do the right thing every day. Every day is a decision. Making the right decision moves you in the right direction in life and in scouting. Do the right thing. If I can help in football, if I can help in anything else, I will. Otherwise, I'm going to be here and I'm going to keep scouting.